Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, y'all. Good morning. We have a great lineup for y'all today. So let me get this started. Halito and hello. Welcome to the Monterey County Youth Summit Race to Equity. We are so excited for y'all to be here with us today. I wanted to take this opportunity to acknowledge our physical space, especially because this is Native American Indigenous Month, Heritage Month. At California State University, Monterey Bay, we reside on the indigenous homeland of the Esalen people. It is on the rich homeland of the Esalen where CSUMB not only thrives as an institution of higher education, but also provides an education abundant with service and experience to a diverse community of learners. Yakoke and thank you. Currently, we live in unprecedented times where we must call on each other to learn, unlearn, and overall understand the social injustices that affect all aspects of our lives. Whether that be in education, our current and future careers, or even within our own social engagements, the choices that we make now, that we make today, highly affect the generations to come. Today, we have some amazing scholars who each wanted to share an aspect of understanding equity in different ways. We also have some great performances lined up from the Jacks and CSUMB's very own Professor Daniel Summerhill, and a keynote speech which will be delivered by Ice Life. The collaborations that made the summit possible were aimed at raising the voices of Monterey County youth on issues pertaining race and equity, while also serving as a way to begin conversations of how to dismantle oppressive systems. We hope not only to change our perceptions, but the perceptions of those who are not in favor of the success and well-being of students of marginalized backgrounds. So, as we move through today's summit and absorb all the knowledge that will be given by these scholars, don't forget to reflect on yourself, on your communities, on your family's values, and on your very own aspirations. The format for today will be as follows. We will hear from, in this order, Lisa Annalise, which is a CSUMB graduate student, Alexandria Adams, a CSUMB alumni, Cameron Littleton from Monterey Peninsula College, Professor Daniel Summerhill, Samantha Herrera, CSUMB Undocumented and Allies President, Alexis Mendez, a CSUMB student, Sienna Fields, another CSUMB student, Ice Life, and a few performances from the Jacks. For a housekeeping note, we want y'all to be able to fully listen and understand what our speakers have to say. So we won't be paying attention as much to the chat and Q&A feature so that you can really hear and absorb all the knowledge that is about to be dropped. So if you do have any questions, the contact information and the video recording of today's event will be posted on the Center for Black Student Success website, which can be found at csumb.edu/Black Student Success. And with that said, let's start off with our first speaker, Lisa Annalise. Take it away, Lisa.
Hello, thank you, Darshell, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Lisa, and I am a Master's of Social Work student at Cal State Monterey Bay. Today, I will be focusing on systematic racism and the role it plays in our justice system. So our justice system is far more complex than I could cover in the next few minutes. However, today I will be trying to focus on three specific topics: racial profiling by police and the discrepancies of sentencing, and the importance of staying educated. Now let's get started. For most of my information, I focused on this nonprofit called the Sentencing Project in Washington, D.C. They focus on criminal justice policy issues. So this one thing that I really enjoyed reading from them is they focus on all 50 states and the incarceration rates for African American males and females. Where do you think California lands on this state? On this list, my bad. California is our state, so it is 12th out of all 50 states, one being the one with the most African Americans who are incarcerated, and 50 being the ones with less numbers. We're 12th. That's pretty high up there, and that's where we live. Based on this information, African Americans are 8 times more likely to be incarcerated. Why is that? That is a high number. And another thing to think about is that in 12 states, more than half of the prison population is Black. And Maryland is actually 72% of African Americans, and that tops the nation. 72%, that's a lot. One of the things that contribute to that is racial disparity. So let me break it down for you for a little bit. So by gender, for male, the likelihood of being imprisoned is 1 in every 9. For white men, 1 in 17. For Black men, 1 in 3. Now let me switch to gender. What about women? What is their rates? So for all women, it's 1 in 56. For white women, it's 1 in 111. For Black women, it's 1 in 18. Why is it that both for African Americans, males and females, they are being incarcerated, they have more of a likelihood of being in prison than just the regular average for their gender? That's crazy to think about. One other thing is that as you see those rates of the likelihood of being imprisoned contribute to the whole size of them being incarcerated. So by this, I mean, they make up more of the population of prison than they actually make up of the population on the outside. And that's crazy to think about. Like, why are they more likely to be in prison? And this isn't something that's just seen in the adult justice system. It's also seen in the juvenile system. So it's not something that miraculously happens when you turn 18, you're more likely to be imprisoned. Even a 13-year-old, 14-year-old being booked into that the juvenile justice system, they still have this the same rates as other individuals. One thing that this is contributing to this is the racial disparity that occurs before the sentencing even happens, before they get to court. So when they're on the streets, who is the ones who are getting them? That is our police officers. And I want to read this to you. It is their code of ethics. This one line always sticks out to me. So they state, I will enforce the law courteously and appropriately without fear or malice, never employing unnecessary force or violence. Do you think this is something that's being fulfilled by police officers? This is their duty to protect their citizens. It is their duty to not hurt or they even focus on unnecessary force, but that's not something that's occurring. You'll hear a little bit more about this later on. But then now, when they get into court, justice is supposed to be blind. They're not supposed to be discriminated based off race, gender, sexual orientation. But if you look at the judges, how many judges are really someone who is a person of color? Most judges you see are white. And everyone has their own bias. And if they don't accept this bias, sometimes that plays a role into when they actually start sentencing individuals, even though they're not supposed to have any bias at all. Oftentimes, African Americans are more likely to have a longer sentence than those who are white, even though they commit the same crime. So by this, I mean, even for a drug possession charge, oftentimes an African American gets a longer sentence than those who are white. If they're doing the same crime, why aren't they getting the same time? And that's something that always is in my mind. My last point that we'll bring to you all today is the importance of being educated. Being educated brings down some barriers. You'll know your rights. You can pass down this information to others, like your family or friends. For me, for example, my parents stopped going to school when they were in 4th grade. And now that I am in higher education, I could provide the assistance that they didn't have before. I could be their voice and I could start supporting them in ways I couldn't before when I was younger. This is something you all could do too. We have this privilege of continuing our education, which is something that not everyone has. So we need to use it to be able to create something. So in the past few minutes, I was able to give you a brief introduction into systematic racism. Like I said in the beginning, it takes a lot longer to be able to have this discussion. But now it got you started to think where light needs to be shined. And I leave you with this. Too often we underestimate the power of education. Education has the power of creating change. This is our privilege, having the opportunity to learn. And I urge you all to get educated and be part of the conversation. Be the conversation starters. Without a start, there will be no beginning. And if you don't know where to get started, just ask. You have all these resources available to you who are more than willing to provide a helping hand. But to give you a place to get started, one of the books that really fascinated me when I first started focusing on these injustices in this justice system is Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson, who is an African American lawyer who in his when he first started career focused on inmates who are sentenced to death who were wrongly incarcerated. So the time is now, and this can't wait any longer. Justice is not blind. But I thank you all for taking the first step by being here today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Lisa, for the interesting outlook. My name is Cameron Littleton, and I'm a student at Monterey Peninsula College. Thank you for coming today. I'm super excited to be here today and talk to you about a few things that have been on my mind for a while. This talk is what I refer to as a structured rant. I call it, we've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. I want to begin my rant by being clear about what Black Lives Matter means. When I say Black Lives Matter, if you are not a Black person, you should not be offended. Black Lives Matter is about Black people who are being killed by police officers. We shouldn't have to be afraid of those who are sworn to protect us. We shouldn't have to live our lives in fear, but many of us do. That's not or shouldn't be the norm. The Declaration of Independence says that we are endowed with certain alienable rights. Among these are the rights to, say with me, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But how do we pursue anything with a knee on our neck? The killing of Black men, women, and even children is troubling and something we shouldn't be so quick to justify. Not that all police are bad or involved in killing Black people, but they have too many videotape killings for Black people to think these are one-offs. These are lives, valuable lives. These are sons, daughters, fathers, mothers, and friends. They deserve every chance at life. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. A few years ago, my mom gave a speech at a church. These were hundreds of people there. She told a story about a little girl who went to a history museum where she saw a water fountain. One fountain said whites, the other said colored. The little girl asked her mother, why is the colored fountain the little girl asked her mother if the colored fountain was for Kool-Aid. I remember the people in the audience laughing, but it made me sad. It made me sad to think that this little girl, regardless of her age, doesn't know the history of this country or the struggle of Black people in this country. A few decades ago, Black people couldn't sit at a restaurant and eat. Black children couldn't go to school with white children. We all have value and worth. We have to find a way to create society where we understand our history and make a decision to not regress, but to move forward in a real and meaningful way. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. I was living in Orlando, Florida in 2012 when Trayvon Martin was killed. In fact, only 20 miles from the place where he died. This was a hard one because George Zimmerman was not a police officer. He was doing what he thought he needed to do to protect his community, but he was wrong. His actions ended in the death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin. His death sent a powerful message to Black people throughout the United States. That message was, our lives don't matter. Then Michael Brown was killed. His young body left bleeding in the street in plain sight for 4 hours. This sent another signal that Black lives don't matter. I keep going after story to make a point that if our lives matter, then stop killing us. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. In one of his most controversial speeches, in which he spoke out on social justice, Martin Luther King Jr. said, "He who passively accepts evil is as much involved in it as he who helps perpetrate it. He who accepts evil without protesting against it is really cooperating with it." That means if you don't get involved in fighting for a more just society, you are basically accepting and participating in the injustice. We all have a role and a responsibility for making our society better. Your silence is a form of oppression. We've come a long way, but we have a long way to go. Thank you for this incredible opportunity. Thank you for listening to my rant.
Hello there, everyone. My name is Alexandria Adams, and I am thrilled to be here today. I am a CSUMB alum, class of 2020, class of COVID, and it has been quite the adventure. Before we get into the topic of allyship, I just wanted to give you a little bit of a story. A couple months ago, I was at a Black Lives Matter protest, and I was in Paso Robles, California, which is a predominantly white upper middle class community in which I grew up in. And there was this one individual who forever changed my life. She changed the way that I see this movement. As we were protesting, we saw a rise of anti-protesters come present. And as they started screaming rude, racist, derogatory terms towards the group, she felt in her being that it was necessary to continue on that conversation. So she approached the anti-protesters and started screaming things back and forth. And when I witnessed her walk over to these anti-protesters, I felt chills down my spine. I felt chills, not in a good way, because I knew two things were being jeopardized. First, the safety of the protesters, but second, she was jeopardizing the credibility of the movement, of the Black Lives Matter movement. This was a lived experience that changed the way that I think about allyship and has allowed me to create an opportunity to dig deep into what the fundamental aspects of allyship are. So today, I'm going to be sharing my discoveries with you. I'd like to highlight just key elements that are essential for allyship. The first is a true internal desire. A true ally must have the internal desire to join forces to implement change. I mean, let's face it, we can't make people be allies. It is a personal choice to join forces of allyship. A true intrinsic desire for personal connection to the community that is being oppressed is necessary when exploring this journey of allyship. The second is inclusive listening. Inclusive listening is a practice. And as an ally puts effort into supporting the community, they must have those critical and necessary conversations with people that look like them in spaces that have yet to adopt the value of diversity. Inclusive listening is attuning your ears to what the community needs and making a personal oath to implement the change towards that need. Finally, last but not least, is self-examination. A true ally must evaluate the power in which they hold in a system that is oppressive to others. An ally must reflect on their past, evaluate their current state of privilege, and tailor their behaviors towards the change that's necessary to see. The journey to effective allyship is critical and is challenging in so many ways, but it's essential that we all, as allies, in particular when we talk about the context of racial inequity and social inequity, it's important that we all take the action to evaluate and reflect on how our past ignorance have inflicted harm onto others. Allyship is essential when we talk about movements and we talk about social change. But before I leave, I just want to leave you all with a quick definition from the Oregon Coalition on Domestic Violence. I think this definition beautifully lays out the role of an ally. Allyship is an effective, consistent practice of unlearning, reevaluating, in which a person upholds systematic power, seeks to end oppression in solidarity with a group of people who are systematically disempowered. Now, when I reflect back on that story of earlier, the one thing that I thought was, there was a lot of things that was missing from the behaviors that were elicited from the individual at the protest, but the word that was missing that really sticks out to me is solidarity. Solidarity is essential when talking about allyship. So for everyone on this webinar, everyone on this call, I want you to all take the oath of being an ally to a community that is disempowered and subject to the systematic oppression. So all allies, we're calling you. We need you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandria. Thank you, Cameron, and thank you, Lisa, for those wonderful words and wonderful observations about life and about how we could be allies in this unjust world. So we're going to transition a little bit and change up the schedule for a second. Let me introduce our next area. So let me go ahead and introduce the Jacks. Jacks is a talented Haitian American family band. The young musical force formed in 2013 as a four-piece, guitar, keys, bass, and drums, and immediately engaged audiences with inspirational lyrics and dynamic performances. For the last 6 years, Jacks has been earning respect and recognition with a level of professionalism not typical of today's youth. Far from childish, Jacks brings a mature sound with lyrical substance and live instrumentation, reflecting on elements of soul, hip hop, rock, and Caribbean influences. Together, these artists take control of their creative voice, nurturing instrumental and vocal skills while simultaneously establishing themselves as composers and producers. Everyone, please give a warm welcome to the Jacks. Oh, it stopped sharing. Okay, there it is. Share your computer sound. I apologize for that. I didn't realize it was gonna mute. I'm gonna start it over for y'all. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for that wonderful performance, Jax. Now to continue on with our wonderful summit here. Up next, we have Daniel Summerhill, and then followed by some other extraordinary scholar speakers. Take it away, Daniel.
Thanks, Darshell. This will be over quick. You won't have time to reply, defend yourself, or comprehend my logic, so grab a tall glass of water, pop a Motrin, and pray that when I'm done, you'll be too numb to realize I just ripped the identity out of you. You will be judged solely on your face, fat, freckles, or lack thereof, skin, style, speech, splendor, number of kids, fathers, number of times you should have been locked up, or the number of times you should have been. I will then place you in a box with those who I believe look like you. White boy, skinny jeans, gangs, punk rock. Black boy, pants low, gold chain, thug. Brown boy, long socks, 12 kids, cholo. Black boy, sensitive eyes, crippled soul, 3 degrees, writes poems, plays basketball with his nephews, never committed a crime, error, stereotype unknown. How will I explain to my kids that growing up in America isn't some inside joke that God has with the angels? That no matter what shade of gold their hearts are composed of, they will always be judged by the amount of melanin in their skin or the amount of clothes that conceal them. And how? How will I explain that no matter what their classmates wear to school, that each kid is still brilliant in his own right? Elegant enigmas camouflaged in the assembly line of grade school, that each kid is a piece of stained glass mosaic masterpiece that spans the crust of the earth. I will say something like, break formation, be new, be you, be a flailing albatross, live outside the box society has placed you in, because, well, Mark Wahlberg sold drugs. Charles Dickens spent a year in prison. Einstein stuttered as a child in hell. Buzz Aldrin has a rap song with Snoop Dogg. So tell me how much you know about these brown eyes, about this ink canvas skin, and I'll tell you how suit and ties have made more men's voices disappear than calls from 800 numbers. So tell me how ugly my beautiful is. How many times you've ripped the gorgeous out of me with one glare and one thought, and I'll tell you, emancipate yourself from mental slavery. None but ourselves can free our mind. Have no fear for atomic energy, because none of them can stop the time. Be black, be white, hell, be blue, but never, ever apologize for being nude in your own skin. When my 7th grade teacher asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I closed my eyes and imagined I'd walk down Martin Luther King Drive, and I replied, alive. It is August 28th, 1952, and I am to be martyred for 77 million, a theme threaded throughout brown-skinned blocks, but no Machiavelli here. Just a bag of bones, 2 lungs, 1 heart, and 3/5 of a brain. When Mammy Till seen her son for the first time post-calamity, his visage was non-existent. His eyes were not his own. Instead, they were 2 bloodshot clips still framed 2 feet apart. His 14-year-old dreams were lynched and tied to the Tallahassee to drown in a stream. Screams were silenced by the decapitation of freedom. And 70 years later, sacrifice still has no denotation. This poem is not to play the pity with. This poem is not to play the blame game. My tongue is a metaphor for celebration, an ode to existence, and a salute to living one more day than the 1 million who you hauled to coffins last night. This body is no oblation. These hands, they craft more than sides of brick buildings. They craft streetlights, cell phones, peanut butter, and breaks. These feet has seen the outside of basketball courts, and this soul has seen the insides of creativity. This here is my song for flight. Before tacit reverence to premature angelic McBride, Ayanna Jones, Sean Bell, and Oscar Grant. Rakia Boyd, Kendrick Johnson, Jordan Davis, Mike Brown, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ramarley Graham. This poem is for every brown-skinned child in this yearly cost of $7,000. When I have a son, I'll explain that his skin is no red hand on the crime scene, that the hood on his sweater is no noose, and that his smile may drive cops nuts. I will tell him that street corners after midnight is no safe haven. It will only make you a disappearing act to those who care about you. I will have your mother safety pin your dreams with a safety pin to your heart, but this pin, it's not safe. It's been bleeding since the start. I will tell them to never carry in Arizona or Florida either, or you will become a target like Jay-Z on Ether. When I had my daughter, I explained that her name is an incantation in 3 syllables, and she'll never have to explain its meaning. I told her, never let anyone tell you that your crown looks better off straight, because yours, it curls and it dips and it bends, and each one reeks of God's existence. I will tell them, never let textbooks be the curator to your history. Never let anyone tell you that slavery no longer exists. The only difference between then and now was men wear 2 chains around their neck instead of 2 chains around their wrist. This is your world. Exist. I will tell them, you were too brilliant to fit into chains and too brilliant to be defined by them. They will try to cripple your dreams. They will try to muffle your soul. They will try to silence you, but when they fail, you stand up straight and you smile big like Maya Angelou. Smile, sigh like Eartha Kitt, and then walk away like Asada Shakur. And when they ask you why you think you're so gorgeous, you tell them this for me, because my daddy said so. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Herrera. My pronouns are she, her, hers, ella, and I'm a student at CSUMB. I am also the president of Undocu Artists and Ally, and I'm also a dreamer. And I wanted to talk a little bit about how my life has been as a dreamer. Since 2017, when DACA was first attacked, my life, my future, and the future of all my fellow dreamers have been a what if. What if I get deported? What if I lose my job? What if all this education I've been pursuing since I got out of high school ends up being for nothing simply because I don't have a good social? This year was a huge one for us. Just like the previous years, good news comes with bad news. The Department of Homeland Security announced that they will reduce the renewal timeframes from 2 years to 1 year. As someone that has renewed her DACA 4 times and my renewal date is approaching, it is frustrating. As I am grateful that I have the chance to renew, I simply would like not to have my life on hold every year and go through the scare of what if I don't get approved. Last week, as a nation, we received great news. The election of President-elect Joe Biden was something that I've had hope for, but we have to keep in mind that the fight is still not over. My life and the future of all dreamers are still on hold. To end, I would like to share this poem by Yosimar Reyes. Some days you wake up sad, some days you wake up frustrated, some days you may wake up tired, some days you may wonder if it's all worth it. Some days you may question your own growth, some days you may think of how immense the world is. Some days, Some days you may think of how immense the world is, to be caged in this country, to be subjected to all the abuse. Some days you just want to breathe. And baby, I'm here to remind you to sit in those moments, to sit in this whirlpool, but just to know that there are people like me picking up the load when you can't. There are people like me pushing so the weight of this country does not crush you. That there are people like you who will fight when I can't. We will take turns pushing against these walls. I got your back and you got mine. In this scheme of things, and if the scheme of these things does anything else matters, even if our fight is unfrightful, we will depart. With our dignity intact, we will depart knowing that this country is losing a prized possession. This country is losing the gift of our resilience. We will watch them as they tear into each other's skins and thank the heavens that we never turned beasts. We never turned beasts like them. Thank you.
Okay, well, hello everyone. My name is Alex Mendez, and I'm a freshman here at CSUMB. And yeah, our parents break their backs working through exploitation, working through the scorching sun. Sweat pours down, watering the same crops that they sell at ridiculous prices, while paying our people livable wages, working through pandemics, working through oppression, working through the golden blaze on the mountains that turns their brown skin to white ash. As if the heat wasn't enough, then they have to come home to teachers asking them why can't they be there for their son? Because their child is struggling in school, you see, struggling to turn in his assignments, struggling to get to class, but they just don't get it. What it means to give and sacrifice your body and time to provide for your family. Every single one of those people would love to find another way to make ends meet. Every single one of them would love to see the child succeed, being clustered like penguins in houses that cost so much. It may just be their death. People living in garages, same thing as living in a freezer. It just doesn't seem possible to live our life the way we dream without breaking our back. Got us living like dogs just to live check by check just isn't enough. It's the never-ending struggle. The lack of opportunity and education to my people is immeasurable. The system starves our people from a proper education and financial stability. Can't they see that poverty causes people to turn to the streets, gangs and drugs as a way to feed the people? To some, it may seem to be the only way out. Hispanics killing Hispanics, turning their white t-shirts to red ruby polka dots. Blood leaks and blood turns to the tears of our ancestors, crying we won't see the morning sun. Mothers crying over the fallen son, generation after generation falling in the same slum. And all of this for what? Can't they see that the struggle can be passed down to generations too? We're too busy learning how to survive. We don't have the privilege to learn how to live. There's too many issues that surround. I hear many people say they want the easy way out. I've heard it. You've heard it. I want to leave Salinas. I want to get some money. We can't flee from all of our problems. We can't flee and leave the future children to rot in the same corrupt system we got. We need to make the change. We can't just keep applying bandages onto a broken bone. We need to dismantle and change the system that were built off racism. I just want my people to get the same chance at life, get an education, educate the masses, and change the system. These are all some of the things that have affected Salinas, especially East Salinas. Our field workers are the people that bring the biggest percentage of cash flow into Salinas, yet they're the most exploited people in our community. And that just isn't right. We saw during COVID times, they were some of the only people to not be stopped as they were considered essential, crammed into the same vehicles, getting a wage they can't even live off of. Is that how you treat an essential worker? That's a joke. Now we combine this with soaring housing prices, where we have up to 3 or 5 families living in one house and single families living in one room. Imagine sharing one room with your entire family. If you contract COVID, there's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Sad part is a lot of our Hispanic population is undocumented as well. So the fear they carry of a possible deportation if issues occur is just crazy. And they keep to themselves because they know if they complain, they're easily replaceable. There's people that are brought over just to simply work in the fields, and that's how the cycle begins. So many layers in the system, but if you complain, you're kicked out. And there's someone else to take a job just like that. And then they ask, well, why didn't you tell us? Knowing damn well they'd be fired as soon as they heard a complaint. And then they go ahead and label Salinas as one of the dumbest cities in America. But do they realize that Hispanics make up 74% of the population? And many of those people are undocumented, and many of those people never had the chance to go to college or get a degree because they were too worried about whether they'll be able to eat. And children feel the struggle that their parents carry within. My parents fled their homes to this magical place called America. Well, it wasn't that magical, but now we're making it our America.
Hello all. I would first like to thank all of the organizers of the Monterey County Youth Summit for allowing me space to share my truth and my passion. I would also like to speak to all of the young people here today and thank you for taking your time to attend this summit. I hope that with our combined voices, we can empower others to use their voice to talk about difficult issues that we all face in our society. My name is Sienna Fields, and I'm a fifth-year student at Cal State Monterey Bay, majoring in global studies. I was also a former internship and involvement with a student-led organization known as Students for Quality Education. Through this organization, I am partnered with over 40 other college students across the CSU system. Together, we work to advocate on behalf of student rights with a specific interest in social justice. I'd like to begin my speech by defining equity. Dictionary.com provides over 6 different definitions of the term. The most popular one being, equity is the state or quality of being just and fair. This definition is a great starting point for scratching the surface on equity, but as I am looking around and seeing many people of color in this space, I'm constantly reminded that justice and fairness does not and has not always extended to all people. Too many times, our nation has shown that justice and fairness is selective, and that the selection process has exhibited racial bias against people of color. A Black entrepreneur and author, Dr. Cheryl Ingram, defines equity as fairness for all, regardless of visible and invisible identities. This definition is a step closer to truly unpacking the importance of equity and how this term can change our entire societal structure. But what is fairness? How do we achieve fairness? And is fairness even achievable for all people? 2020 has been a very impactful year. At the very least, this year has allowed this nation the opportunity to sit down and observe the injustices that people of color have been experiencing since the nation's existence. The aftermath of the killings of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and many others have called people all over the world into the streets to share their voice and proclaim that Black Lives Matter. Even right here in Seaside, activists and organizers gathered over 1,000 people to join the efforts. This county's ability to band together in the darkest of times is the push that we need to unlocking equity, fairness, and justice for all. But before we speak about all of the other lives that I have aforementioned, I would like to speak directly to the lives that we have lost in this county due to police violence. In 2014, 2 Salinas police officers were involved in the killing of an unarmed man named Frank Alvarado. Frank Alvarado was a resident of Salinas and a formerly incarcerated man who served a 12-year prison sentence. A county that he would rather stay in prison than return to society. Now, I want you all to sit with that for a moment. A man who was in prison for 12 years would rather stay institutionalized than to return home. After serving a 12-year sentence in jail, Mr. Alvarado said, and I quote, "I didn't want to come out to this." Frank's testament speaks to how difficult it is for former inmates to return to society. The rate of recidivism across the US is extremely high. Recidivism is the amount of former inmates who return to prison for repeat offenses or new offenses. A study in 2010 showed that an estimated 68% of released prisoners were arrested within the first 3 years of their release. 79% were arrested within the first 6 years of their release, and 83% were arrested within 9 years of their release. Frank, like many inmates, know the stories and lives behind these statistics, for these numbers speak far more truth to actual lives than to the rates of faceless names. He himself spoke to the difficulties he had to endure getting out of prison. After giving a new start, Frank spoke to his fellow inmates who didn't have the same opportunities as he experienced returning to Salinas. After being given a state-issued ID, which I might add is not easily accessible to most former inmates, he asked, what about those people who can't get here? What about those people who are in gangs and they can't get on the bus because they can't? Frank was wondering about these occurrences only a mere year before his life was taken by Salinas PD. Frank was parameters of systemic oppression for those incarcerated. It is clear to see how Black and brown people are disproportionately targeted by the police and prison system. I challenge you all attending to this summit to ask yourselves, do we need cops or do we need care? When talking about police and prison abolition systems, many people say, what do we do about those bad apples who we can't control? I truly understand this sentiment, as I would not want to put myself or my loved ones into any deeper harm. But it is important that we understand the essence of safety. I want you to ask yourselves a couple of questions. I'm going to start with the first one. When do I feel? We as a society feel safe when we have access to food. We feel safe when we have a home and shelter. We feel safe when we have access to healthcare. We feel safe when we can provide for our families and ourselves. Now, I want to ask you a second question. How do we heal and help those who have committed wrongdoings against us? Do your answers include nurture, care, or understanding? Perhaps they even include therapy, counseling, and psychological help. I push everyone in this summit and urge you to reevaluate and estimate what we need to be safe in this society. I'm calling you to reimagine public safety. I'm calling you to address Monterey County, a county that is the childhood poverty capital of California, a county where 1 in 4 people are hungry, a county that has a high rate of homelessness in population and also mirrors a high rate of violence. I want you to ask yourselves, should we be policing our own people in these moments, or should we be helping each other? Do we need more cops, or do we need more care? It is time for all of us to reimagine the system that does not provide equitable opportunities to people of color. It is time to cut funding for systems of oppression and place those funds back into our communities. It is time to expand our way of thinking. It is time to think of alternative ways that will reaffirm life and heal our communities. I want to leave you with this quote by an abolitionist and brilliant thinker who has inspired me to join this important work. Angela Yvonne Davis reads, "Radical simply means grasping things at the roots." I want you all to think about solving these issues at their roots instead of their ends. Thank you so much.
Hello, and thank you for that wonderful, wonderful, wonderful discussion topics, especially, oh, Sienna, you're just a light, and there's nothing to say about these scholars that you didn't hear right now. I do want to go ahead and take this opportunity to move into another Jack's performance before we get into our keynote speaker and absorb all the knowledge that he is about to drop as well. So we're going to go into another performance of the Jacks, and I hope that y'all enjoy. Sharing screen.
My brother, women on sons and children of some fathers, trying to see from my point of view, giant walking in a shoe, living constant fear and oppression. They can see and learn a lesson on your eye, so fire your gun, step down and when it's what you've done. We are the people. On the ground, ends up and you just jumping down. What you gonna tell his family? That dead body on the concrete. You should know you're the ones to blame, but on the innocent life almost every day. 10 lies to hide it wrong. Most of my people is the freedom song. We are the people.
brown people getting gunned down when the moon comes, but they shooting someone's sundown. Hands up, it don't matter, don't run now, where you end up like 50 boys in the hood now. We gotta stand up for our people's equality, we marching up on opposition, many no stopping me, that dope this up with lies, they do is popping, so my people oppressed, we can't breathe, we need some oxygen. Tell us like us, we gon' take this back, century, they're supposed to protect us, but they're looking like enemies. I don't wanna die too young, it's not meant for me, I feel those sounds of talk, the day that my pops said to me. Be careful in the streets, only on the man hunt, keep your head on top to keep away from the man gun. Every time they see a black man, it's up in the more people getting murdered in cold blood, and I stand up.
All the people.
Wow. Wasn't that great, y'all? That was awesome. Thank you so much, Jax, for those wonderful performances. Now let's introduce our keynote speaker. Ice Life is a renowned artist, university lecturer currently at Stanford University. He's a social entrepreneur and justice advocate. He is CEO of Life Productives and a highly retained California-based product development firm with a client portfolio that includes Kaiser Permanente, the National Fair Housing Alliance, the University of California Regents, Comedy Central, and Deloitte. At his helm, he manages their work, which creatively works with organizations and individuals to develop ideas, revamp products and services, build on existing projects, and collectively cultivate new ideas in ways that are raising awareness of social and health-based virtue. Now, please give a warm welcome to Ice Life.
Hello, everyone. How are you? Can folks hear me? Can someone just give me a thumbs up? Let me know you can hear me.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. I'm honored to be here today as part of the summit. And when I logged in, the two things. One, I saw the young sister giving a brilliant social justice assessment. That what I really respect about it is that it was localized, that it dealt with the things that are happening there in Monterey. You quoted Angela Davis, and another thing that we've learned from Angela is that wherever we are, that's where we are, and that's where we can organize at. So I really respect and appreciate you lifting up and raising awareness about your community and what's going on there, and the Jacks, y'all are rocking. It's really fresh to see and be a part of today. I wish we had so much time together, but I'm going to do my best to, with the time that we have, share some ideas. My name is Ice Life. I am an artist and advocate. I live here in Los Angeles. I'm here at our firm now in Burbank. I'm originally from Oakland, East Oakland, to be exact, California. And my life is artistically and professionally dedicated to uplifting our folks and advocating for all people having adequate food, shelter, and clothing. And so with that, I'm just gonna dive into some things. Right on, Daniel, yep, East Oakland. I'm gonna feel free at any point to drop something in the chat or ask any questions. I'm gonna share my screen here. 1 second. It's saying that the host disabled the attendee screen sharing, so I just need access.
Alamir, I don't know how to do that through this format. Can you give us 2 seconds?
No problem, no problem. And then I'm asking Jess at our office, I believe that she's on too, to Jess, if you're familiar with how we can do this, let me know.
You should have access now.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I do. See, all good, no worries. Cool. So I am Chief Executive Officer of a product development firm. We do all of this cool stuff. I've worked with NASDAQ and Revolt and TED and Twitter and Google. And our work is to push causes and things around social justice into the mainstream and engage and hold cities and businesses accountable to the needs of marginalized communities. And you can go to our website to learn more about our firm. It's lifeproductives.com. But I share this because it doesn't matter. And to put that into context, that whatever success or personal achievements I've had in my life mean nothing without all of our folks being engaged in adequate food, shelter, and clothing, and having the right to take a real shot at defining our individual and communal destinies. And I get those principles, I think, a lot from how I grew up and with my family. My mom, she always jokes, she says that when I was born, I didn't smile, I just looked around like I was disappointed. And there's a picture of me with my big mama here. And it's true, I've always kind of had this kind of grimacing assertion of the world and what's going on. And so I hope that today, though, what I'll share today may be through a semi-critical lens, you all can receive it with the great love that it's meant to have. This is me when I was 17 years old in East Oakland. I didn't know anything about social justice or awareness or where I was headed in my life. When I think back in this time that many of us may wrestle with or remember wrestling with, I wasn't a bad kid. I wasn't doing harm to others, but I also was growing up in a really hard and impoverished neighborhood and a family that had a lot of struggles. And I was worried about my physical safety, if I would be harmed by someone in my city or by law enforcement, and found myself having to grow up and develop in a world that was demanding a lot of me, but maybe not considering what it was I was going through. This photo, as I'm looking at it, I'm realizing this picture is 20 years old. And I want to say and acknowledge that for those of us that grow up in circumstances that are challenging and hard, it's okay to say that your circumstance is challenging and hard. And it's important that the educational system and the society that's developing young people owns and pays attention to the difficulty that you're dealing with, and not expect you to just keep moving along in life and not acknowledge the struggle that many of us are dealing with. I want all of you, everyone on this call, I want you to think of any number between 1 and 10. Don't tell me what it is. Just think of any number between 1 and 10. Okay, you got it, cool. Do something crazy, it doesn't matter. Add 3 to that number. Cool, cool. Now add 2 to that number. Cool. Now do something crazy, it doesn't matter. Subtract the first number you picked. Cool. Now, do you want to add or subtract? Someone tell me, do you want to add or subtract?
Add.
Cool, thank you. Add 2. Now think really hard the number you have left over. Seven. Let me know, show me some hands if you have seven, if what you have left over is seven. So there's hundreds of people on this call and you probably all have seven. And you're like, well, how did he do that? How does he know that? I'm gonna show you how I did it. I started off with you. That's you. That's a non-gender specific stick figure. I asked you to pick a number and you did. Then I told you to add 3. And then I said, add 2. And then I said, subtract the first number you picked. Remove yourself from the situation. Well, the minute I told you to take away the number you picked, I knew that all of you are holding 5 because all you have is the 3 and the 2 that I gave you. Then the game starts. Yo, you want to add or subtract? And I knew you were going to say add because it's still early and adding is easier. So you said add, and I said add 2, and 3 plus 2 plus 2 equals 7. This is a mathematical poem to say that if I remove you from a situation, I can make you whatever I want to make you. And as we talk about race and conversations about race in America, we have to understand that at the core of race and racism is something that attempts to control who you are. So you're not a divine human being with an African face, you're a nigger. You're not a powerful woman, you're a bitch. You're not a someone who is destined to do great things, you're at risk. Everything that they call us minority, you are minor. For our Latino brothers and sisters, goddamn, they call you an illegal alien against the law and from another planet. And all of these things, when you remove that thing of knowing like, nah, I'm beautiful because of who I am. I'm beautiful because of where I come from. The seeds of racism, of prejudice, of discrimination falls on us, but we are an undeniable and beautiful people. And that's not an opinion. It is true that we are an undeniable and beautiful people. I was teaching many years ago. I shared this once with a group of people at the college there in Cal State Monterey Bay, and I was talking to the students there, and I told them a story about how I had a student who her name came up on my Scantron like this, and I said, Lachey? And she said, here, and that was it. And years later, I ran into her in a Target, and she ran up on me, she gave me a big old hug, and her mama was like, who is that? And I went and I introduced myself, and after a while I had to go. I said, okay, well, Lachey, I'll see you later. Her mama said, what'd you call my baby? I said, Lachey. She said, her name is LaDasha. And what's beautiful about this, about the creativity of this, is that the things that get talked about is like, oh, that's funny, or that's ghetto, or something about the creative names that come out of our community, is what I see in it right away, is this creativity and redefining of who we are. That somewhere we know that those names like Ann and Beth and or Todd or Thomas might be nice names, but somehow we know and choose with all of those names that we can pick from. We choose to have a new way that we define ourselves and look at ourselves. I'll admit though, I was like, dang, what's your son's name? Topostrophe? Frantz Fanon teaches us that each generation out of relative obscurity must discover its mission or betray it. What he's saying is that all of us, we have to look around at the times that we're born in, and we have to say, what do these people need? And so when we start talking about this generation of youth, I encourage you all to think about, when you look around, what does it seem like your generation needs? And then look at the pop culture that's put on you. Think about the ideas that are pushed out to define you And how much of a role does your generation play in saying, this is who we are? Or does media go, this is who you are? And then you look at it and go, oh yeah, you know, I'm kind of like Kylie. You know, I'm kind of like Drake. You know, I'm crazy like Cardi. Or you know, I'm a champion like this person. Are you really defining who you are? Or are you presented with a set of options that you're having to choose from? And if you're presented with a group of options that you have to choose from, that is not freedom. Freedom is when you stand and you look out into the world and you go, this is who I am, and I'm something that no one has ever seen before, and I can't wait to continue to become it. We are undeniable and beautiful people. We are not our oppression. We are not police brutality. We are not to blame. We are not synonymous with death and murder. So now, when people see Black and brown people, they see Black people, they go, oh yeah, you know, y'all are dealing with police brutality. Y'all are dealing with poverty. Y'all are dealing with low enrollment in universities. The danger is that people see Black folks, see people of color and think, oh, y'all are only your hardships. When we are more than that. But as I look around at what this generation needs, I think about one thing that we do need to understand when we're talking about brutality is though we are not these things, we need to understand police and police brutality. What is the role of police in America and their relationship to Black people and poor people in America? So when you see a poster of a police officer or you see people talking, it's normally stuff like this. You know, men and women who are brave and they want to help communities. And when you talk to people who become police, they say, oh, I just wanted to help. And this idea and image has existed in America for a long time. This idea of being a positive helper in the country, being a positive, safe role, whether it's comedy or movies. It's this idea that police are funny and that are this interesting part of society. When I was a kid, cops became super and robotic with RoboCop. And then he did it again with RoboCop 2. He's back to protect the innocent. And in that line of who the innocent is, we think about, well, who are they talking about when they're saying who the guilty is? In the futuristic version that came out a couple years ago, crime has a new enemy 25 years later. And we know when we talk about law enforcement in America, when they talk about who the enemy is, or if it's this funny, jokey way, it's always this protect and serve thing that always has to deal with Black and brown people being dangerous. Protecting and serving, no, the police protect and serve the wealth of the people. The police protect and serve property. And people who are poor don't have property. And we see this idea of the police protecting and serving wealth because in America, the police are the janitors of capitalism. A big part of that job requires abuse and control over the people that do not have wealth and power. And so as this generation wrestles with and thinks about and tries to understand police brutality and what's going on, it's important to understand the police as janitors of capitalism. And they see us as the mess. And even if there's a good police officer out there, the reality is that the way that the police system is built in this country is to abuse and to harm. So though this is the way that it's portrayed, this is how it pans out in these abusive and brutal forms. And this generation is beautifully rising up against this and saying no more. And the people who suffered it 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years before you were born are so grateful for you. Barack Obama was elected president of the United States, and you all developed in this time of great change in the country. I wish we had more time to talk about these things. And then as you got older, Donald Trump became president of the United States. And this idea of fighting and combating became popular and sensationalized in the news. So one thing that your generation will do is stand up and find ways that in loving ways and in ways that are constructive, that there's debate and ability to wrestle around these issues. In order to do that, we have to get comfortable being uncomfortable. I hear students all the time saying, I can't. They get around a conversation that they disagree with, or they hear someone say something that's ignorant to them and they can't deal with it. But in not dealing with the conversation, in not being willing to be uncomfortable around these racial conversations, we won't truly be able to advance. So now there's a new president-elect in this country. I'm 37 years old. I comb my hair in the morning, I look and I start to see gray hairs. And though the older people on this call will laugh at me at 37, I start to feel a little older. And I think about all the presidents in my life. So when I was born, this dude was president. His name is Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan promised uniting the country, dealing with things that would be positive for poor people, particularly Black people in America. And then he gave us crack cocaine and the crack epidemic. After him came his vice president, George Bush I, who also played a role in his crack plan. And on top of that, when we were struggling with drug and crack addiction, his office told us, if you're having problems with drugs, just say no. After him came Clinton, who said that he was against everything that the first Bush was against, and he would do something better for the country, and he would stand up against racism in the country. And what he did instead is pass some of the most racist incarceration laws that the country had ever seen, and cemented the prison industrial complex in this country. Well, after him came a second George Bush. And the second George Bush said, the way that I'm gonna bring peace to the world is by bombing the whole world. And after him came Obama. And Obama was this great sign of hope, seemed like he'd be something totally different than what we had experienced before. And in this, what became challenging though, and a little different, is that Obama also deported more immigrants or people who were deemed to be here illegally than any president in US history. And then after him, of course, comes Donald Trump, who tells us that all of these people are liars and losers and that we can do better and that he's gonna make the country better and he's gonna help Black and brown people, and the way he's gonna do it is by getting the Nazis to help him. So now we're in this new day. Your generation is presented with a president-elect and a vice president, and the same old promise of we're gonna take care of you exists. And your generation will rise to the occasion to say, no, it's not about you saving us. These are our demands. This is what we are building. And if you prove to be worthy, we invite you to join our movements for liberations for ourselves. Our heroes will be everyday people. I'm inspired by the students that I see when I travel around the country that are meeting and loving with one another, figuring out ways to wrestle through their personal issues, their community issues, and provide answers and solutions. And these are the heroes. It's not about who's elected in office. It's not about the newest celebrity. It's about us. And the last thing I'll ask you to think about is the year you were born. Think about the year you were born. Go look up what was happening on the day you were born. And that's a hint of why you were sent to this earth and what our collective purpose is. The question that we always should be asking ourselves throughout our lives is, why are we here? And for the young people on this call, I can tell you, those of us that are a little older than you, that are noticing gray in our hair, we're inspired by you. We're moved by you and your strength and your power, and are excited to see what you create and who you become. Thank you for having me today.
My goodness, wow. Thank you so much, Isa.
And I can answer any questions, or if we have time for that, or if not, it's okay. And thank you.
I don't think we have time for that, but definitely you have just dropped some knowledge. And the thing is, we have to kind of think where we are and where when we were born. And I'm just looking at my colleagues in our group chat right here, and everybody's pretty much on board that you just dropped some knowledge, and that was well needed, and it was definitely well said. I want to start us off with the closing. After processing all of that, it's kind of hard going back into what I'm doing here, because what you just said was just so monumental. As an Afro-Indigenous woman, I'm actively trying to strengthen my understanding of both my heritages, especially because I'm on the journey of reconnecting to my Choctaw ancestry. And that journey starts with self-education and by learning about my peers and allyship. The folks that y'all just learned from today are pioneers of the future. They're creating social change and equitable arrangements. I hope that you were able to grasp and understand what these scholars were saying. We have learned about factors of incarceration. We have learned about allyship. We have seen the power within Daniel Summerhill and Alexis Mendez when they did their spoken word pieces. Something I had to realize and actually re-realize today is that we truly have come a long way, but we indeed have a longer way to go. It is our hope that you walk away or click away, since we're in this virtual environment, with one message that changed the way that you think about the world, even if it was in a small way. And I challenge you to think about what Ice Life said and where you started. Go ahead and do the Google search of when you were born and how things were, and then see where things are today, because we still have a long way to go. This summit was created for you. It was created for your families. It was created for your communities. This summit was also in collaboration, and it was born out of the Super Saturday event. Super Saturday is one of the many events that are supported by the CSUMB community to increase the preparation, retention, and graduation of African American students. This annual partnership between CSUMB and the African American community leaders throughout the state provides additional outreach, support, and preparation for events such as college and career fairs, financial aid workshops, and the Cal State Applied clinics and more. And we hope that you emerging college students who are joining us on this call will attend the next Super Saturday event that'll be at CSUMB. With that said, I really do appreciate everybody for coming out today, and let's have another virtual applause and snaps for amazing scholars. If our panelists could unmute themselves and give a round of applause for yourself and for your fellow colleagues, that'll be just amazing. Thank you all for being here today. I also want to take a moment to thank the wonderful mentors who have guided the student speakers along the way. We appreciate the time that they have taken out to share this awesome experience for y'all. I would also like to thank our various sponsors, many of which who are from California State University, Monterey Bay, which includes the Office of Admissions, who puts on the annual Super Saturday event, the Office of Inclusive Excellence and Sustainability, the Otter Cross Cultural Center, the School of Humanities and Communications, the Department of Health, Human Services, and Public Policy, Young Men of Color Collective, the Office of Teaching, Learning, and Assessment, and various other funders. Each is an amazing resource to reach out to if you are a current student, alumni, or even if you are a prospective student wanting to attend CSUMB in the future, which I hope you do. Please look towards the Center for Black Student Success website, which could be found on the Office of Inclusive Excellence and Sustainability at CSUMB for additional resources pertaining to today's event. And that brings us to the closing. Thank you all so much for attending today. We appreciate all the time that you've taken out to come with us to the summit, and as well as all the speakers. Have an otter-tastic day.
Bye.